Hello there, this is the Shadow Ranger, and I just wanted to share something I've been thinking about for the past couple of days that I find kind of funny. The more I listen and read things from the IWC, the more I think that wrestling companies, especially TNA, should start reading dating advice books and use that information to determine how they're going to treat wrestling fans. Because the more I hear wrestling fans talk, the more they remind me of women. And I'll tell you why. It's one aspect. Myself being a guy who grew up around a bunch of women, I feel that I know a lot more about women than the average man. Something that sticks out to me. Women want to be treated a certain way, but I find that they usually want one particular guy to treat them that way, not just any guy. Have you ever noticed a woman wants a certain type of boyfriend, wants to be treated a certain way, and yet the guy she dates is nothing like that? And have you ever noticed that she could have another guy who will treat her exactly the way she says she wants to be treated, and do the things for her that she says that she wants a man to do for her, but yet she won't leave the guy that doesn't do it and date the guy who will? Yet that same woman will constantly try to get that guy who doesn't do those things to do them. I think wrestling fans are a bit like that. Especially when you look at the complaints that I hear lodged at the WWE. Something I noticed. A lot of the things that I hear the IWC say they don't like about WWE, I look at TNA and see it as the opposite. And then I always find myself wondering, well, dude, why don't you just watch TNA? TNA has that. But they'll always come with some kind of weird, some excuse that's not like a sentence. Like if you ask a woman who says, I want a guy who does this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and you say, well, why don't you date a guy who's willing to do that instead of staying with this guy who doesn't? She can't give you a straight answer, but she'll constantly try to get that guy who doesn't do those things to do them. I'll give you some examples of how I see this being compared when I look at WWE and TNA. I find myself saying, people say, oh, we want wrestling to not be so cartoony. We want things to be more realistic. Because, MMA is real and we want wrestling to be more realistic. Do some realistic storylines. And they'll make their complaint about the WWE, but I'm like, well, TNA does some realistic shit. Have you seen the Jeff Jarrett Kurt Angle storyline they've been doing for the past few months? Why don't you watch TNA? There it is. Some very, very realistic right there. Well, I can't see. TNA, They want realistic storylines, but they only want them if WWE does them. They just known WWE for years. They're gonna stick by WWE. Hey, I'm not gonna leave the guy who's beating me for a guy who doesn't. I'm gonna get this abusive boyfriend to stop abusing me. They all jump up and say PG sucks. We fucking hate PG, no PG, fuck PG. And I'm like, TNA is not PG. Watch TNA. It's not PG. TNA. TNA is too nice. I'm just not into TNA. Really? They jump up and say, we want some emphasis on the tag team titles. We want a real tag team division. We want to make those WWE tag team belts mean something. And I'm like, really? Machine Guns, Beer Money, Gen Me, Inc., Team 3D. You can't. You're not gonna watch them. Machine Guns and Beer Money are putting on some of the best tag team matches we've seen in years. Oh, you only want good tag team wrestling if the WWE does it. Oh, okay, okay. We want more storylines. Dudes ain't doing stuff. Only it's the whole Cena show. Nobody else is doing anything. And I feel like I could just take the time to explain to them how TNA has storylines up and down the card. Everybody's doing something. All the belts have a feud. Have a feud, a storyline surrounding them. But why bother telling them? They'll come up with a reason to reject it. It's so odd to me. And I'm trying to figure out where it comes from. I've talked about there being the double standards when it comes to WWE and TNA, and how it amazes me that the younger company, you would think the younger company would get less scrutiny, that the younger company would get more slack, yet it's the opposite. They get much less. I talked about in my last video just the number of things that WWE can do where people won't complain, but if TNA did them, it's like IWC has a meltdown. Every freaking wrestling radio show has a 20-minute TNA rant where they just trash everything about the company. And I kind of wonder, maybe this is just because of familiarity thing. Like, we're more comfortable with WWE. We've known them forever. TNA only started in 2002. I was watching WWE when I was like 5-6 years old. When I started watching TNA, I had already finished my first year of college. I think it's because a lot of us grew up with WWE. We feel more comfortable with them, and I think a lot of us still see TNA as like the new guy, like still in that sense of I don't know you. I think a lot of us still look at TNA like that sense of I don't know you. You knew. You gotta earn your respect from us. You still. I think a lot of people still consider them to be the new kid on the block. Because when you look at the fact that TNA's been around for 8 years, while the WWE has been around for over 50, that familiarity. But I'm getting off topic here. There's other ones I've heard the people say. The blood thing. Did I already mention the blood thing? No, but they'll complain about how no blood, and I remember I've seen WWE pay-per-views more than one occasion where fans be chanting we want blood, and somebody will bleed and they'll stop the match and have trainers come out and clean them up and clean up the blood and bandage them up, and the fans will boo. I'm like, you want blood? Dude, Abyss is bleeding right now. I guarantee you, if you turn on the episode of Impact, if Abyss is on there, he'll be bleeding. I promise you Abyss is bleeding. Just know you're not going to flip over and watch Impact instead. You're not going to watch TNA. Even though you say you want blood and they got it. You say you want good tag teams. TNA has them. You say you want storylines in the undercard. TNA has them. You say you don't want... You want something more mature. You don't want PG. Well, TNA's not PG. No. Telling you. Just like women. I think what has happened is that WWE is playing is the bad boy and TNA is the nice guy. I sometimes think that, man, TNA's too nice. People talk about how companies not caring about their fans. I mean, I sort of think maybe TNA cares too much about their fans. Dixie Carter, and I mean, she goes out of her way to communicate with fans. Eric Bischoff, every month Eric Bischoff does a Q&A session on Monday Night Mayhem. If you go to Monday Night, he did one this week. I listened to it this morning. He comes in once a month, the week of every TNA pay-per-view, and he does Q&A sessions where fans can send in emails or call in and ask Eric Bischoff any question, and he'll answer any question they ask. He's yet to refuse to ask a question. To answer a question. Dixie Carter's on Twitter. She's on Facebook. She puts herself out there to she goes out of her way to make herself available to the fans, to talk to the fans, to answer questions that the fan has. I mean, Dixie Carter just had a Q&A, first part of her most recent Q&A up on the website just last week. When have you ever heard of Vince McMahon doing a fan Q&A? I mean, it amazes me that TNA goes out of their way to treat the fans good, and they get shit on. WWE treats the fans like shit, and they'll still support them. I'm constantly amazed by that. I think it's that thing they always talk about today. The nice guy versus the bad boy. TNA's nice, so the fans don't like them. They need to be treated like shit. They like women. You gotta treat them like shit. You treat the woman. One guy. They say date two women at once. Treat one woman like a queen and treat the other woman like shit. The woman you treat like a queen gonna tell you that you're weak, that you ain't nothing. She gonna disrespect you and cheat on you. The woman you treat like shit will stick by you through thick and thin. Excuse me. She'll stick by you through thick and thin. I think that's why I feel like wrestling fans seem to remind me of women. I think the worse WWE treats the fans, the more they'll support them. And the better TNA treats the fans, the less the fans will support them. I think TNA has to start saying fuck you. I think if Dixie Carter came out and said fuck the fans on Twitter one week, the next week her ratings would go up. I think she needs to just do a fuck you speech. Fuck you. I don't need you. I don't want you. Fuck all y'all. I guarantee you, ratings boost. Well, what she got that she telling us to fuck off? They all tune in to see what she got that's so good that she would tell them to fuck off. It's constantly amazing. Say you want blood, TNA got blood. Say PG sucks, TNA ain't PG. Say you want realistic storyline, TNA does realism. Say you want good tag teams, TNA has good tag teams. I was listening to the Diva Dirt today. Diva Dirt Live. I like the Diva Dirt website. It's a great website to get news on women's wrestling. That's their focus, is women's wrestling. And I've had this discussion with the people who run that site on more than one occasion. It's like, I'm amazed by the fact that they'll sit there and cover every audio show they do. They do about 2 or 3 audio shows a week. They'll cover everything WWE does. They do a post show for every episode of Raw. They do a Wednesday night show where they talk about mostly what happened in WWE and a little bit on indie stuff. They do post show after every WWE pay-per-view where they talk about the women's match. And it's like, man, and they'll complain about the stuff WWE does. I'm like, man, all these things you complain about are non-existent in TNA, Diva Dirt. Why don't you talk more about TNA? Why don't you praise some of the good shit TNA does? I remember just a couple months ago, I listened to the freaking Diva Dirt post-Raw show. There's like a 3-minute Diva match, and they complained about it for 20 minutes. Meanwhile, the same week, or the week before one of them, I watched Impact, and the opening segment is a knockouts brawl with like 6 knockouts, or just having an all-out brawl all over the Impact zone. It went for 10 minutes. Then they came back later tonight, had a kick-ass 6-woman tag match. I listened to all the Diva Dirt shows that week. Not one mention. Barely anything on their show today about the last woman standing match. All I heard of them is 20 minutes of Kelly being in a main event on SmackDown. I'm like, man, Mickie James and Tara was main event and Impact in a kick-ass cage match. Y'all barely mentioned it. It's one of those things that amaze me, man. It amazed me by the fact that the majority of the complaints that I hear about the WWE from the IWC are complaints where I can show you that that complaint is non-existent in TNA, yet you still won't support TNA more. I can go down the list of things of just the complaints I hear about WWE. Nearly any complaint. I probably could do with just about any complaint that I hear from the WWE. I could probably show you this complaint, this problem doesn't exist in TNA, and if you watch TNA, you wouldn't have this complaint because they don't have that. Think about what I said and leave a response. I mean, after hearing what I said, do you agree or disagree? Do wrestling fans seem a little too much like women to y'all? And maybe wrestling companies need to treat them more like need to start using dating advice books to determine how to treat the fans. This is the Shadow Ranger. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.